Welcome back to the channel. I'm Algabot, and today we're studying an expert advisor for MetaTrader 5 called RSI Band Squeeze Breakout. This is a momentum breakout approach with a twist. Instead of asking whether the RSI is high or low, it wraps a set of Bollinger-style rails around the RSI itself, then watches for the moment those rails pinch tight and suddenly release. By the end of this video, you'll understand how the strategy measures the volatility of momentum, how it filters for a genuine squeeze, and how it times its entries. As always, this is educational information only, not financial advice. Let's set the stage. Most RSI systems ask a single question: is momentum overbought or oversold? RSI Band Squeeze Breakout asks a different one. It asks how volatile momentum is right now and which way it's about to fire. To do that, it takes the RSI line and builds an envelope around it, a mean plus or minus a multiple of the RSI's own standard deviation. That gives an upper rail and a lower rail, and the gap between them is what we call the RSI bandwidth. That bandwidth is a direct read on how tightly momentum is coiled. When the RSI drifts sideways in a narrow range, its standard deviation collapses and the two rails pinch shut. That's a momentum squeeze, a market storing energy rather than spending it. When a real directional impulse finally arrives, the RSI's standard deviation flares, the band snaps open, and the RSI punches through the expanding rail. The strategy treats that first thrust out of a squeeze as the highest quality moment to consider a trade. There are two more filters. First, a squeeze test makes sure the band was genuinely compressed before it expanded, so the EA isn't reacting inside an already wide, noisy band. Second, a price trend EMA acts as a regime gate, so breaks are only taken in the direction of the prevailing trend, which helps screen out counter-trend fakeouts. Risk is handled with the average true range, so stops and targets scale automatically to whatever symbol and time frame you attach it to. This kind of design tends to suit traders who are comfortable with momentum breakout logic and who prefer a rules-based, mechanical framework on liquid, trending instruments such as major currency pairs or gold on the 15-minute through 1-hour charts. Remember, every strategy experiences losing trades, and nothing here is a promise of results. Let's walk through the exact logic, one step at a time. Everything is computed on the primary time frame, and the EA only acts once per newly closed bar, so it never reacts to a flickering, half-formed candle. First, it calculates the RSI using the RSI period input, which defaults to 14, keeping one RSI value per bar. Then, over the last band period readings, 20 by default, it computes the mean and the population standard deviation of the RSI. The upper rail is the mean plus band multiple standard deviations, and the lower rail is the mean minus band multiple standard deviations, with band multiple defaulting to 2. The bandwidth is simply the distance between those two rails. Next comes the squeeze test. The EA takes the bandwidth just before the potential breakout and compares it to the average bandwidth over the prior squeeze loopback bars, which defaults to 40. The pre-breakout bandwidth must be at or below the SqueezeFactor multiple of that average, 85% by default. This guarantees the band was genuinely pinched before it opened, so signals only come out of a real compression. Now the entry triggers. For a long, the strategy detects a fresh cross of the RSI above its upper rail, meaning the previous RSI was at or below the previous upper rail, and the current RSI is now above it. It also requires the RSI to sit on the bullish side, at or above 50, and the closing price to be above its trend EMA, which defaults to a period of 50. The short side is a perfect mirror. The RSI freshly crosses below its lower rail. The RSI is at or below 50, and price is below the trend EMA. Risk management uses the average true range over the ATR period, defaulting to 14. On a long, the stop loss sits below entry at ATRSL multiple times ATR, 2 by default, and the take profit sits above entry at ATRTP multiple times ATR, which defaults to 3. On a short, those distances simply flip. That gives a reward to risk framing of roughly 3 to 2. The EA also skips a signal if the spread is wider than max spread points, and it holds only one position per magic number at a time, letting the ATR stop and target manage each trade to completion. Let's read the code the way you'd see it in MetaEditor. At the top are the inputs. RSI period is the momentum line we band. Band period is the window for the RSI mean and standard deviation, and band multiple sets the rail width in standard deviations. Squeeze loopback and SqueezeFactor define the compression filter. TrendEmaPeriod is our trend gate, and ATRSL multiple and ATRTP multiple scale the stop and target off the average true range. In the middle, 3 Booleans do the deciding. The squeezed flag checks that the prior bandwidth is at or below the SqueezeFactor multiple of its recent average. The cross-up flag confirms the RSI freshly punched above its upper rail while sitting at or above 50. The cross-down flag is the mirror. The RSI freshly dropped below its lower rail while at or below 50. Now the 2 branches. In the long block, if cross-up is true and the last close is above the price EMA, the EA reads the ask price, places the stop below entry at ATRSL multiple times ATR, sets the target above entry at ATRTP multiple times ATR, and calls trade.buy. In the short block, if cross-down is true and the last close is below the EMA, it reads the bid, flips the stop above entry and the target below entry, and calls trade.sell. Notice both sides are exact mirror images, and the exit is defined the instant the trade opens. Let's walk through this illustration candle by candle. In the subpanel below price, you can see the RSI drawn in gold, wrapped by 2 rails, the upper rail in red and the lower rail in green, with the 50 midline dashed across the middle. On the price chart above, the blue line is the trend EMA. Look at the first 4 candles. Price is barely moving, ticking sideways in a tight little range. Down in the panel, the RSI is hovering right around 50 and going almost nowhere. Because the RSI is so calm, its standard deviation collapses, and you can see the red and green rails pinching together into a narrow throat. This is the squeeze, momentum coiling, energy being stored rather than spent. The strategy is measuring that pinch and comparing it to the wider average bandwidth from earlier bars, confirming the band is genuinely compressed below the SqueezeFactor threshold of 85%. Now watch the 5th candle, the one carrying the buy marker. Price breaks upward with a strong bullish body, and it closes above the blue trend EMA. In the panel below, the RSI flares to life and punches cleanly above the expanding upper rail, while sitting comfortably above the 50 midline on the bullish side. That's every long condition satisfied at once. A fresh cross above the upper rail, out of a confirmed squeeze, with price above its trend EMA. The buy entry fires right there. The stop loss is placed below entry at 2 times the average true range, and the take profit sits above entry at 3 times ATR, a reward to risk framing of about 3-2. Follow the next 2 candles. The impulse keeps running higher. The rails have snapped wide open, and price extends into the take profit target marker on the 7th candle. The long trade is complete, closed at its ATR-based target while the momentum was still expanding in its favor. Now the market shifts character. Around candles 8 and 9, price stalls and rolls over into another quiet, sideways drift. Notice the rails in the panel pinching shut a second time. A fresh squeeze is forming, and the RSI is settling back down toward the midline. Energy is coiling again, but this time the pressure is building to the downside. Watch the 11th candle, the one with the sell marker. Price breaks down with a firm bearish body and closes below the blue trend EMA. In the panel, the RSI drops sharply and punches below the expanding lower green rail, now sitting below the 50 midline on the bearish side. That's the complete short setup, a fresh cross below the lower rail, out of a squeeze, with price under its trend EMA. The sell entry triggers. This time the stop loss sits above entry and the take profit sits below, again scaled by the average true range. From there, price slides lower through the final candles as the downside impulse expands, and it reaches the short take profit target marker on the last candle. Both trades share the same logic in mirror image. Wait for momentum to coil into a squeeze, confirm the compression, then act on the first thrust that breaks a rail in the direction of the trend. That combination is what the strategy is designed to isolate. So that's RSI Band Squeeze Breakout from top to bottom. We saw how it puts Bollinger-style rails on the RSI to measure the volatility of momentum, how the squeeze test confirms the band was genuinely pinched, how a fresh cross through an expanding rail times the entry, and how the trend EMA gate and ATR stops shape each trade. Remember, everything here is educational information only, and never financial advice, a recommendation, or a solicitation. Every strategy carries risk, and losing trades are part of the process, so always test thoroughly and manage risk carefully. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like the video, subscribe for more MetaTrader 5 strategy analyses, and leave a comment telling me which EA you'd like me to study next. You can find more at www.algobot.live. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Trade responsibly.